Kasra Farahani and Autumn Durald Arkapaw. You guys are the production designer and cinematographer for one of the most visually striking shows of the season, Loki. Had you guys known each other or met before the show?
No,
No.
like in a past life we did.
Yes,
when we met. Yeah.
for sure. It seemed like it in terms of our sensibilities, you would think, but no.
That's exactly what I thought, because everything was so it felt like you guys were one mind, and also with like Kate Herron, the director, with the look of it. So what was your first meeting like? What did you guys discuss and talk about and hit it off?
I remember. Do you remember our first?
I think so.
It was so he was on the job earlier than I, and they were at Disney prepping, and I had my first day at Disney, and I met Kate. And I went in her office and we kind of talked, and she's like, "Oh, I want to introduce you to Kasra." And before that, she is like, "You'll love him and you'll love his designs. Like, you got to meet him. This is going to be great." I'm like, "Okay." So then she walks me over to his office, which is like down this hallway at the end. And, he's there smiling, loveliest guy, but he had all of his drawings and references up on the wall. And I just remember thinking the moment I saw that, I was like, yes. It's going to be amazing, because it was just great. It was all this amazing architecture and kind of sets that I was, already excited to shoot. And who knew if they were going to kind of end up becoming what I had seen on this wall. But yeah, it was just a great kind of first meeting. That was the first time we met. And then I think you had your pitch book on the desk, and
Yes.
And I looked through that, but it was a lovely day. And it just, from there on, it was a great team, the three of us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kasra, what do you remember about?
I remember that I remember seeing Autumn's work before I met her, because after Kate and Kevin Wright, our creative producer, had met with her and loved her work and basically brought her on board, they shared her website link with me, and I was thrilled, because Autumn's shooting style is very distinctive and very bold, and just she shoots this amazing kind of distinctive wide low coverage that I just loved immediately. And some of the way that I had been illustrating the sets was in a similar kind of form language, just incidentally, because I didn't know Autumn, and I didn't know she was going to come onto the project. And so we could just tell right away that we had a lot of common ground in what we thought looked good and dramatic and cinematic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I was thinking the renderings were at really good angles already, so you're being given a reference that's already kind of has a great angle. So you're already drawn to it.
I talked to Kate, and she said you guys all just hit it off right away, and you guys even had the similar like shorthands when you made like movie references, when you're talking about like inspiration. So what were your conversations like when you're talking about the visual tone and language of the show?
Yeah, I mean, Kate and I, we had, because the cinematographer is not brought on as early as the production designer, I did some kind of one-off prep with her where we, meet once a week, maybe kind of go over stuff. But one of the earliest talks we had, I mean, her references in her pitch and when I took the interview, ranged from Brazil to Blade Runner and Seven and Zodiac. So all of these films that are kind of favorites of mine as far as tone and, quality of light and drama. But our first kind of in-depth talk about visuals, we kind of explored discussing Shrew, really. I remember because, I wasn't on fully yet, and it was something that kind of struck us in the series. And she was just like, let's talk about this because it's very complex and it's exciting. And, the way it's written on the page was very kind of simply written, so that we could explore it and make it bigger. And then we involved Kasra, and it was like, long story short, he kind of made a model for us to explore, like a foam model in the beginning. But yeah, we were trying to find ways to build like energy and do bigger kind of camera movement, because a lot of the other stuff where they're talking, was very much like, we had great references for that, and we kind of knew what that was. But to make the bigger set pieces and bigger explosion moments within the series, like we started talking about how Children of Men and these types of movies gave great energy. And so that was one of the first talks I had with her about visuals.
Mm-hmm. And Kasra, I love the sets themselves because you guys had a lot of practical sets, but you guys also had ceilings, which I love because you don't see that a lot in movies or shows. But like you were saying about like Autumn's camera angles, like the low coverage, you could really see the ceilings and the lights, and it gives this really oppressive quality, especially at the TVA. It feels like a prison and it's claustrophobic. So can you talk about designing those sets, especially at the TVA with those ceilings?
Absolutely. I'm so gratified that you noticed all that, because that is a big part of what I wanted to do, and coincidentally what Autumn wanted to do. And just as you say, it's not exactly common to build these large, complex architectural ceilings with integrated lighting. But we got to do it because of a lot of careful planning and basically trying to get the story in such a way, trying to suggest things to the writing team and the director, Kate, to move scenes into these kind of bigger sets so that we could justify building a more complicated set and basically saying, you're going to be in here so much, we're going to see this, let's really build something special that nobody's seen before. And just the fact that Autumn's style dovetailed so much with what I was kind of, what my architectural goals were, just really was lucky, because it really took Autumn and myself and Kate and Kevin Wright, our creative producer, like advocating for this approach, which was not a conventional approach. It took all of us really advocating for this to get it approved. And it was risky because, like I said, it was sort of unprecedented, and we thought it would work out, but we weren't sure, and it did. So it paid off, but it was a little sketchy there.
It took a while to convince them to sign off on the ceilings.
Well, yeah, it's like an uncommon thing, and when you're trying to do something differently than what has worked in the past, it's understandably takes some convincing, and you have to make a case as to why it makes sense to do it this time, even though it's not always the right thing to do. And it was our distinctive look of our show that made this the right approach, from what Kate's goals were and Autumn's goals were and my goals were, all together made this the right choice, I think.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And I imagine it's more expensive as well, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
But it's not just like, it's like the ceiling and it's like a cream ceiling or beige ceiling or whatever, like it's the lights as well, and the show makes such great use of practical lights, and then just like shadows and like sunlight as well. And obviously Autumn, you're a huge part of that. So what was your reaction when you guys got the sign off to do ceilings and then working in the lights and shooting with that, and how did you incorporate those practical lights, and what lenses you used, I guess, to accomplish that?
Yeah, I mean, when we decided to do that, it was so exciting because, like, if you look at, I would assume if you're gonna design a space, you're gonna design a whole space. And if someone's gonna come in and say, let's chop half of that design off and just put like a big softbox up there, it's gonna change, it changes everything completely, the way you shoot it, the way it's lit. So it doesn't feel right to do that. So, I think us fighting for it and it actually happening makes complete sense. It made sense to us, but I guess in the structure of, them doing it in the past and it working, they were a little wary of that, and also, like, these are big, heavy ceilings, and, it takes a lot of thought in how to rig them and how to incorporate light in them if it's not practical sources. So it was just such a great idea to have everyone on board and to be able to keep that design element, because it's so huge. And I like to shoot spaces, not just like people. I think the relationship between the person and the space is so important to tell the story. And I think sometimes a lot of people forget that, and they're just kind of focusing a lot on the actor's face. And so yeah, it was, every day was exciting to kind of walk into a full space, and but stressful because it puts a lot of pressure on his team and my team, and getting all these sets ready was very difficult. But yeah, and as far as my aesthetic shooting, I love shooting anamorphic, very wide format, which makes it a kind of distinctive choice to tilt up, because you don't have as much top and bottom as you do with spherical. But you can find great frames, wide frames in that format. And it's my favorite format. I tend to shoot a lot with that. But a lot of people are always like, oh, when you shoot anamorphic, it means that, the background's going to become too shallow and I can't see the set and stuff. And, I don't believe in that at all. I think I love shooting with wide lenses and always getting wide coverage. And when you have a great set, like, why not? It's like, that's telling the story just as much as the person talking. So yeah, I mean, we just all kind of were on the same page as far as that. And yeah, why not showcase the world, is it's there. So, and it's real, it's not fake. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this show is also very dialogue heavy, which is one of the best aspects of it. So you're spending a lot of time with these characters in specific scenes. So the set should be a character unto itself. And like the time theater in the pilot, and also He Who Remains' office in the finale, like that's just an extended long scene. So what goes into your planning for it? I guess Kasra, starting with you, like when you're spending so much time, it could be like maybe 10 pages of dialogues like in this set, what are you trying to incorporate into that set, and like especially in the background, to make it feel full of life, and like this has been here for a really long time, or like He Who Remains, he's lived here for centuries.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you know you're going to be in an environment for a high page count, it's challenging, but it's also reassuring, because you can justify spending some resources there, because it's gonna pay off because you're using it so much. So from a creative standpoint, what you're trying to do though is to create enough visual interest, to create richness, so that you have, you can give Autumn basically options for how do you spend so much time in this space and not arrive at the same frames over and over again, and have different kind of vignettes of looks in one part of the set versus another part of the set, and to create lighting that or to integrate lighting into the architecture in a way that it facilitates that same thing. The other thing you're thinking about is, if you're going to be in that set that much, you really want to do it as much in camera as possible, both because it's going to give the director and the cinematographer and the actors much more to work with, but also because it gets really expensive if you're set extending, if you're doing visual effects for 10 or 15 pages of a scene. So there's practical as well as creative reasons why that you take into account when you're doing all that.
And Autumn, what about you, shooting for extended periods of time in a particular set?
Yeah, I mean, just listening to him talk, because we've done talks, and we talk personally about this stuff, and having someone that's thinking about your job before you get there is so important in kind of the design process and prep between the PD and the DP, because he's already thinking about depth with light and camera angles, and like thinking, oh, well, let's do kind of this long hallway that enters the room, but then give some foreground elements of statue or fireplaces, because I know she's going to shoot someone sitting at this desk, and behind that person at the desk is a fireplace, because that there's going to be some nice kind of glow from that. So he's very thoughtful in that kind of storytelling element, but also practical in shooting. It's like having someone thinking practically about it, because sometimes people design spaces like, this is a great space that we've designed for off the page, but not thinking about how we have cameras in there, and the depth and stuff. So I think a lot of the sets, even though we were sitting there and talking for ages, I had those textures from his, the wall texture, or keeping the space a bit darker, but then giving me a source of light that would streak in, because he knows that I like that kind of play with shadow and stuff. So yeah, I had no issues with being in spaces for a long time, at least in this project, because there was so much variety too, of like contrast of color, and like, yeah, practical sets where you have soft top light versus like other sets where we had really streaming in hard light. So a lot of variety, and it's just a testament to, yeah, someone designing things well for film, but also architecturally, because I think that's where it stems from, the real world, right? You want to feel like it's real. So having an architecture background from your designer is pretty clutch. Now I know it's
Yeah. Well, I love the end of episode 3, Lamentas, when Loki and Sylvie are running through the city, and that was a practical set, right, Kasra? Like, that was built, and it looked circular, was it not? Or so, can you talk about designing that?
Sure. Well, but that's actually yes, and we can talk about it. And a lot of that design was a conversation between Autumn and Kate initially, and then I came into it kind of after they'd already had some conversations about what the narrative needs were, that there was this like pursuit through this kind of narrow, harrowing setting. And so with that sort of input from them, we started to map out a course of what these kind of 2 city blocks of this alien world would look like, and how it could facilitate the specific action vignettes, and also the kind of, because it's meant to feel in the end like a oner, there's some editorial, cinematography, gags that we tried to facilitate also in the scenery by providing wiping opportunities at the right time and stuff like that. But the city was practical up to a point, just to about, I think if I remember correctly, it was about 16 or 20 feet up. We had scenery, which covers you in much of the coverage, but not all of it. And then we had help from our very talented visual effects team to extend it upward. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a coup that we got to build that and shoot that. It was pretty cool, and
It looked awesome. Well, Autumn, Kate said, like, you guys just decided like this was going to be our oner, like that chase. So what went into shooting that and stitching it together?
Yeah, it was early on. That's why it's so interesting, because it wasn't shot first, and we definitely needed time for him to build it and design it, and then kind of go through all the kinks with SFX. But it was a long time in talking about that, and it started. We had them on a bike at some point, a motorcycle, and that got kind of ditched. But a lot of prep. Yeah, we just kind of kept workshopping the idea with previs, and Kate would tweak it here and there based off of story moments, time, set, kind of elements that we needed action to happen to get from point A to point B and stuff. So it took a lot of prep, and I think we still talked about it during our pandemic break as well. And then once Kasra kind of plotted it out on the back lot, we went there a few times and all walked it together. And then, the next phase would be walking it with the actors. And then when some structures started to come up, we did rehearsals with camera and Steadicam, and kind of figuring out, is this a Steadicam shot, or are we incorporating crane, or are we going to do a handheld? And we kind of ended on it being all Steadicam, and he kind of stepped up on some platforms and wrote a grip tricks at one point. But yeah, it was a nice kind of evolved into something that was a bunch of different departments working at their highest level, trying to make things happen. I mean, if Kasra may know, but just like all the practical lights that are built into the set, he decided to do black light and black light paint. So that had its own testing, phase and element to it. Getting everything ready and rigged, for the shoot date was very difficult, I'm sure, from his construction and design wise. And so, yeah, it was great to see that everyone loved it so much. And it worked out, and it's such a fun little sequence to have in a set. And, I mean, a series, because I'm sure it wasn't cheap to kind of incorporate that.
Are you either of you returning for season 2? Can you say? You can't say.
I don't know. I don't know if we can or not. I'm not going to say anything.
Well, I definitely hope both of you are, because I love the look of it, and I want to see more, especially now that we have the multiverse. So, well, it was great speaking to both of you. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.
Thank you
Cool.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.